All right, good morning. Today we're going to talk about one-step equations. We're going to take some notes and write down some keys, and then we're going to do some practice problems. So let's get started. So there are 4 keys to solving equations successfully, in my opinion. The first one is that you need to know that the equal sign is in the middle of every equation. So it doesn't matter if you have 3 terms on the left and 1 term on the right, or 10 terms on the right and 1 term on the left. The equal sign is always the middle of every equation. The second thing you need to understand is what inverse operations are. Inverse operations are operations that undo each other. Okay? So inverse operations are addition and subtraction, and then multiplication and division are the other inverse operations. The third thing is whatever you do to one side of the equation, or the equal sign, because it's in the middle, you have to do the same thing to the other. And that's your properties of equality, your addition property of equality, subtraction property of equality, multiplication and division. And then the last thing is your final answer, the variable has to be singular and positive. So it has to have a coefficient of positive 1. Okay. I also have 3 steps that I go through to solve equations, okay, and to give me a little bit of clarification. The first step is that I like to identify all variables and constants. Okay, so let's look at an example. And what does that mean? Identify all variables and constants? Well, it means that I put a V or a C over top of them depending on what they are. In this, it lets me know that I have 1 variable and 1 constant on the left side and 1 constant on the right side. And it's going to guide me. The second thing I like to do is identify the equal sign as the middle of the equation. The way that I do that, another very simple thing, just draw a line straight down the center of, just down the middle of the equal sign. And then the last thing that we have to do in order to solve these equations is do inverse operations to get your variables on one side of the equal sign and constants on the other. Like I said earlier, we have a variable and a constant on the left side and a constant on the right side. So I know that I'm going to leave my variable on the left side and I'm going to move the constant of negative 15 to the right side with the constant 5. And if a negative 15, what is the inverse operation of a negative sign? Well, it's a plus sign. So I'm going to add 15 to both sides. My 15s on the left side are going to cancel out, and I'm going to get x equals 20 as my answer. In this situation, we use the addition property of equality, and we'll go over those with the coming examples. Okay, let's try a few more examples of this right now. So we have 3 examples here. If you want to, pause your computer and see if you can solve these correctly. Okay? And we're back. If you paused your computer, take a look and see if you get these right. So my first step is to identify that they are variables and constants. Okay? Second step, draw a line down the middle of the equal sign. Third step, I need to figure out what I have to move. I have 1 variable on the left and 1 constant on the left and 1 constant on the right. So my variable is going to stay on the left side, and I'm going to move the constant of positive 5 using inverse operations. How am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides, and then you get those to cancel out, and you get x equals 85. And that's my final answer. When we subtracted 5 from both sides, what property of equality did we use? Yes, we did. We used the subtraction property of equality. Okay, let's look at example 2. Identify that we have a constant, a variable, and a constant. And the middle of my equation is the equal sign. And I need to move the constant of negative 20 from the left side to the right side. What's the inverse operation of subtraction? Is addition. So I'm going to add 20 to both sides. My 20s are going to cancel out, and I'm going to get y equals 70 for my answer. What property of equality do we use in this one? We use the addition property of equality. And then in the third example is a little bit different in that it has 2 variables, 1 on the left side, 1 on the right side of the equal sign, and it has 1 constant on the left side of the equal sign. I'm going to draw a line down the middle of my equal sign, and then I'm going to realize that I want my variables on the right side because I already have just a constant on the left. The way that I'm going to make that happen is I'm going to subtract 3m from both sides. The 3m's are going to cancel, and we're going to get 21 equals m. Okay? Does it matter that the m is on the right side of the equal sign or the left side of the equal sign like in examples 1 and 2? No, it doesn't. So that would be our answer, and we would use the subtraction property of equality. Okay, now we're going to move on to a few more examples that are solved using multiplication and division. So example 5, we have 5t equals 80. I'm going to identify my variable and my constant, a variable on the left side. I'm going to identify the middle of my equal sign. And when you have 5 next to t, that's saying 5 times t. So how do we undo multiplication? We undo multiplication with division. So we need to divide by whatever that coefficient is in front of t. The coefficient in front of t is 5, so we're going to divide by 5. The 5 divided by 5 is going to cancel out, and you're going to get t is equal to 16. And in this case, we use the division property of equality. Okay? Why don't you pause the computer right now and do example 6. 42 equals negative 6c. Okay, so you paused the computer, and let's see if you got it right. So again, I'm going to identify my constant and my variable. I'm going to identify the middle of my equal sign, or the middle of my equation, which is the equal sign. And then I need to undo the multiplication of 6 times c. The way you're going to undo it, divide by the coefficient of c, which is negative 6. The negative 6 divided by negative 6 will cancel out, and it will give you a coefficient of positive 1. And then you get negative 7 is equal to c. Again, it doesn't matter if the variable is on the right side of the equal sign or the left side of the equal sign at the end. Whatever side it's on, just leave it there as long as it is a positive 1 coefficient. And what property of equality did we use in this one? Again, we used the division property of equality because we were dividing. Example 7 says s divided by 3, or s over 3 equals 15. Okay, so another way you could think about this is what number divided by 3 equals 15? Come up with an answer, but oftentimes it's not that easy. All right, so we have to identify our variables and our constants, draw a line through the middle of the equation, and then we have to see. So s divided by 3, or s over 3, what is the inverse operation of division? Well, it's multiplication. And what are we going to multiply? Well, we're always going to multiply by whatever is in the denominator. Multiplying by whatever's in the denominator, multiply by 3, and the 3's are going to cancel out on the left side, and you're going to get the multiplication property of equality, and then you're going to get s equals 15 times 3, which is 45. Okay? Why don't you take a second, pause the computer, try and solve example 8, and come back to me. Okay, now that you solved example 8, identify our variables and our constants, identify the middle of the equation, and w divided by 5, or w over 5, is division. So the inverse operation of division is multiplication. We want to multiply by 5. The 5's are going to cancel out, and you get w is equal to negative 10 times 5, which is w is equal to a negative 50. And we use the multiplication property of equality. Okay? These are solving one-step equations. If you have any questions, please watch the video back and talk to your teacher. Have a good one.